of the social safety net again. You're going to see them push for welfare programs like they have never done before. And you go, but Rick, no, they're against welfare. They're against government programs. Yes, they are. They're going to privatize it all. Think back to George Bush. Think back to faith-based initiatives. Those are going to come back in a huge way. They're going to come back in a way that they're going to enrich all of the charlatans and all of these grifters and all of these so-called religious folk who own stadiums for their churches and don't pay taxes and have figured out how to steal from old ladies. They're going to get their noses, they're going to get their snouts in the government coffers. And you're going to see the theft. All under the guise of, we care about the babies. We're caring for the babies. And they're going to justify it. If you watched Kristi Noem on Deface the Nation over the weekend, she was on point. We're not going to go after the women. We're not going to go after the mothers. No, we want to encourage them to bring their children. It was the right tone. She's the right person for this. We're going to talk about how we get family leave. We're going to talk about how we get paid paternity leave. We're going to talk about how we make sure that kids get food and education and health care. We're going to talk about all this stuff. And yeah, they're going to talk about it and talk about it. But I say they're going to eventually do it for the right people. Now, understand, for the right people, the connected people, the right people. We know who those are. The white evangelical quiverful folks, the well-connected. This is where this is going. Understand where this is going. They've been trying to privatize education for a very long time. This is the giant wet dream for God Incorporated. Because this is going to give them a mission to use taxpayer dollars to say, we're just trying to make babies' lives better. And look, the boots on the ground, the slippers on the ground, the whatever, they're going to be the true believers. It's the charlatans at the top, the folks who've been making money off of this stuff for decades. They're going to make even more. So wait for that pivot. It's going to happen. I guarantee it. Because you remember, the welfare queen, she was lazy, shiftless, sucking off the government teat. The new frame, the pivot, going to be away from the welfare queen and to the, Godfare queen. The goddess. Because she's just taking care of her babies. We love the babies. This is going to happen. Because we're already seeing it. We're already seeing the scam, the Jesus capitalism that's out there, the prosperity gospel. Those folks are going to take full advantage of this. Where I'm at, you hear on the radio all the time, there's a health insurance for religious people. So you can get good, cheap insurance, and you can share your bills. It's going to be great. And it's all one big ripoff. But it's all in the name of religion. And that's how they're going to sell it to us. They're going to resell us a social compact based on the right form of religion, on the right form of faith. And it's going to be like foreign missionaries. There are a couple of organizations locally that do work with shelters and food bank stuff here in my area that I refuse to work with because they don't allow people to come in and eat or stay for a period of time unless you allow them to browbeat you with the religion. If you just needed a place to stay for a period of time, no, they're not going to let you do that. We've got to proselytize. This is how social programs of the future are going to be doled out. I guarantee it, because that's what these missionaries do. That's what they do. And again, you better be the right religion. Now, here's the thing. For right now, the majority of people, and this is across the board, the majority of people are opposed to this decision. This is where we're not a democracy. Poll after poll after poll puts it at somewhere between 56 and 60% of people oppose it. Strong majority. Even, in some polls, a majority of Republicans, which, get ready, Republicans, I think you're going to see a mass suburban uprising. There was a story today that 1 million more registered Republicans have happened over the last year, Democrats switching to Republicans. This, oddly enough, today being that story, this is where I think that reverses. Because I think you're going to see the security mom, the soccer mom, the school board mom, whatever you call her, whatever name they keep slapping on suburban mothers. She's going to turn into the safety mom. She's going to be, I want my daughters safe. I may not want them to have abortions, but I don't want them in back alleys. And I certainly don't want them desperate and at the behest of. This was one of those things that I was thinking of. As a father, I'm always worried about my daughters and abusive men. Because they're out there. There's tons of them. And you think about you look at the statistics. Overwhelmingly, women are killed by boyfriends, husbands, intimate partners. That's the majority. It is what it is. Now you throw this into the mix. And this is what I've been fixated on all weekend. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. My mind's been fixated on this. Because I remember guys when I was in school, years ago, who their girlfriends got pregnant and, they didn't want to get married. They didn't want to have a kid. They couldn't afford it. All of the reasons that young adults, end up having abortions and go that route. Imagine that option not being there, and then the desperation that comes in. Or just boyfriends / husbands who don't want to be fathers. And I the name Ray Carruth popped into my head over the weekend. And you go, who the heck is Ray Carruth? Well, any football fan knows who Ray Carruth was. He was star wide receiver for, I think it was the Carolina Panthers, if I'm not mistaken. Had a brilliant career ahead of him. His girlfriend got pregnant. I think her name was Sharice Adams. He decided that didn't want to pay for the child, another one, and tried to have her killed. And actually did have her killed. Now the child was born, and all of that. But this is where my mind goes. As a parent, this is something that I then have to worry about. And I couldn't help but say, thank you, Supreme Court, as if I didn't have enough to worry about having two young women to worry about. Now you've added this on top of it. Thank you. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on line 1. Alice, how are you?
I'm okay. Yeah, I want to jump in there. You just know that there are going to wind up women dead, found, along the road or disappear that are pregnant because, they have an abusive boyfriend or what have you, and they don't want to be a dad, or how about the ones that are married? We've seen that often, where the guy's flinging around with somebody and they become pregnant. So, no abortion. Well, I guess they're going to wind up disappeared, dead.
Yeah. How many Republican politicians over the years have we seen force girlfriends or mistresses into getting abortions? Now that's not what are they going to do? What are the desperate crowd over there going to do? How much worse will that get?
Oh, I think it's going to get a whole lot worse because, if these mistresses are going to say, hey, I want child support. And here we go. Now we've got women conveniently disappearing that nobody knows anything about. It's just crazy. I was sitting there thinking today, this is insane. The crowd that claims to be patriots tries to overthrow the government. The crowd that claims to be pro-life is only pro-pregnancy. The crowd that claims to love Jesus don't follow anything that he teaches. It's just like hypocrite much, people. But I don't think they realize the damage that they're doing. I mean, we know that if women are going to die, we already have the maternity rate in the United States for pregnant women dying is the highest in the so-called, first world nations. And there's going to be more dying.
Yeah.
And I don't think they care, because I think they're like, well, cheaper than getting a divorce, just, get her knocked up and let her die. It's just crazy.
Yeah, not a good time to be a woman in this country right now.
Well, no, it absolutely is not. Have a good evening,
Thanks,
Rick.
Alice. It's not, and this is where organizing, this is where doing something, this is where Democrats had better get their, together. They better start planning some legislative agenda stuff. In states like California, they're going to put it on the ballot and try and make it, put it into their constitution. You better start doing that stuff. States across this country better start mobilizing, better start organizing, better start fighting, because the other side doesn't seem to run out of time or money, and they're better at this. They're better at the messaging. They're better at communicating. They're better at getting the message out. They're better at legislating. And Democrats, time to get your head out of the sand. Now, this is one of those moments where I'm really frustrated where we are. Now, I saw this story where more than 80 prosecutors have signed on saying that in like 12 states that they're not going to prosecute women, because they've got these trigger bans and all this stuff that's going on. And you go, okay, that's great for now. What about down the line? This is a moment where it's a line in the sand kind of moment. This is we got to fix it this election moment. This is a realignment moment. This is a big thing. Now, do I think it's going to happen? I don't know. I'm guardedly optimistic. I'm hoping that as the days and the hours go on and people start really paying attention to what could happen, that they become more active, more engaged, more angry over this. And not just angry out in the streets yelling and screaming, but angry and getting politically active and using the powers and the levers that we have, not just to hold our political leaders accountable, but also our corporate leaders. Start making these states that have made these horrible, horrible decisions, making them accountable. Start boycotting companies that are headquartered in these no right states. Because, stop and think about potentially what could happen. Like I said, I was talking with a friend who's on the board of directors of this major university, and they could lose half of their female population. And if you're a state that is going to protect people's reproductive rights, that's a major selling point to bring people to those states. Now, in the Josh Hawley frame of making red states redder and blue states bluer, as those women move from no right states to sanctuary states, those states become much bluer. And what's left behind are, the reactionaries and the extremists. We continue to divide. That's not a good thing. It's a bad thing for us. I had someone ask me, is there a compromise? Is there a compromise on Roe? And I'm like, no. Roe was the compromise. We're just in this kind of bizarre moment. Now, as I said, I'm looking to see if Republicans make that pivot, how much of our tax dollars they're going to be trying to push into social programs, which, I'm all in favor of. I'm all in favor of taking care of the children because it wasn't their fault. I'm all in favor of ensuring that kids get, food at the end of the month, that they're well fed, that they're educated, that they get the health care, that families get the leave time that they need, the assistance that they need. These are programs we should have been doing all along. But they're going to steal these from Democrats, and they're going to legislate them. They're going to move them in a direction that they get done. So when it happens, don't be surprised. And when it happens, make sure that we're fighting that they remain public programs and not in the hands of these private profiteers. It's the same thing that they've done to the charter schools and the once they get their hands on it, once they get their snouts in there to steal the big-eared guys thing, it's a giant sucking sound. Your tax dollars going into the hands of, well, charlatans and grifters. Again, just to save the babies. It's frustrating and it's angering, and well, we'll see. A lot to get to today, a lot to talk about. Also, Supreme Court decision today on the more religion stuff. Hey, can't wait to talk about that. Because who didn't know that they were going to decide for the football coach praying at halftime and at the 50-yard line? Who couldn't figure that one out? The good thing about having a crazy court like we have, no surprises. You know exactly what they're going to do. You know exactly how they're going to come down. You know exactly what the vote is. There's no more surprises coming out of our court. Bought, paid for, used, abused. No surprises. I'll also love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. If you've missed any of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Always there, always available. Right back. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1905. That was the day over 200 socialists, anarchists, and Marxists representing over 40 organizations met at Brands Hall in Chicago to convene the founding of the Industrial Workers of the World. Representatives from groups like the Socialist Party, Socialist Labor Party, and Western Federation of Miners joined together for an 11-day convention to discuss the future of industrial unionism and revolutionary struggle. Those present included Big Bill Haywood, James Connolly, Daniel De Leon, Eugene V. Debs, Lucy Gonzalez Parsons, Mother Jones, and many more. They hoped to cohere an alternative to the politically conservative business unionism of the American Federation of Labor. They sought to build on the legacy of the Knights of Labor and their motto of "an injury to one is an injury to all." They were determined to build an industrial union that organized workers regardless of skill level. They also distinguished themselves by opening their doors to men and women, black, white, and all immigrant workers, including Asians. Big Bill Haywood opened the first day's morning session with the following remarks, saying, quote, "This is the Continental Congress of the working class. We are here to confederate the workers of this country into a working class movement that shall have as its purpose the emancipation of the working class from the slave bondage of capitalism. There is no organization that has for its purpose the same object as that for which you are called together today. The aims and objects of this organization should be to put the working class in possession of the economic power, the means of life, in control of the machinery of production and distribution without regard to capitalist masters." For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
What's the most damning thing about America's healthcare system? The system. While our doctors, nurses, and technicians are among the best in the world, the system itself is not even designed for care, but for the constant expansion of profits for insurance giants, drug makers, hospital chains, system managers, financiers, and other voracious components of the medical industry. For starters, ponder that term, medical industry. The ethical essence of healthcare is that it's a human right, essential to every person and to the common good. But corporate elites now claim to own our health by shriveling the concept of care to just another product available to those who can pay whatever monopolistic industrialists demand. But this rationing of care meant the industry was leaving a mass market of millions of patients untapped. So industry bean counters made a critical adjustment. Lower prices? Don't get silly. Instead, the system is pushing medical debt as the ticket to care. So you come in sick or injured, scared, dazed, and suddenly you're hooked up to a long-term medical payment plan. A recent survey by the Kaiser Family Foundation revealed that more than 100 million Americans, including 41% of all adults, are in hock because of the skyrocketing costs of the so-called care industry. This includes debt that patients owe directly to the system, plus money borrowed from family or friends or put on credit cards. An analysis in 2019 estimated that families were being hit with at least $195 billion in payments for medical borrowing, a number driven dramatically higher since the pandemic. As one doctor angrily said of industrial health care, debt is no longer just a bug in our system, it is one of the main products. We have a healthcare system almost perfectly designed to create debt. This is Jim Hightower saying, how sick is that?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So now that Roe has been overturned, the question becomes, what do you do now? You may remember about a month ago we had a guest on talking about building the Underground Railroad to where, we're going to take women from states that have banned it and we're going to move them to places where it's legal, and we're going to create an environment, even though we're seeing companies that are saying, look, if we've got employees in those states, we're going to make sure that they get what they need. If we have to pay for it, great. And this is what we need to be doing. This is the kind of work we need to be making sure happens right now in response. The short term is making sure no one is denied, no one is blocked, no one is harassed, and no one is jailed. And then the longer term is you got to get those rights back. You got to fight for those rights back. And here to share some thoughts on what we do in the short term and maybe what the medium long-term goals are, I've asked Robin Marty to come talk with us. She is the Director of Operations at the West Alabama Women's Center, also the author of the new handbook for a post-Roe America. She's also got an incredible op-ed out. Mad about Roe, here's what to do now. Op-ed over at the New York Times. Robin, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you so much for having me, Rick.
So lots there. The big question is now what? I mean, we've seen stories in Texas of women, begging and crying for help, and doctors saying, sorry, nothing we can do. We've seen stories in Wisconsin of people going, we don't know what to do now. You need this. We don't know what this brave new world is. How do people navigate where we are?
Well, I think a lot of us are still trying to understand what this exact moment means. Everything is changing, but honestly, it's changing in both directions. Oh, just a few days ago, we saw, I believe, 9 states that made abortion completely illegal as soon as the Supreme Court ruling came down, including my state of Alabama. But now we're seeing that some of those states have managed to do court challenges stating that they believe that there is still a right to an abortion in their state constitution. So we're seeing some of this roll back already. Utah has just had a law. They've just had their trigger ban blocked and is able to do abortions again. Texas has just put in a challenge against their total abortion ban trigger. And I believe Louisiana clinics just reopened because they also have challenged their trigger ban, and that has gone to the courts and a restraining order has been put on that. So we know there's already movement. Unfortunately, in a lot of ways, that makes it even more confusing because it's impossible to honestly figure out which state is open or closed until a person actually calls and finds out. And today for us, we had probably 3 different patients who came in who were supposed to have appointments today, who were contacted over the weekend but either did not get the message or came in anyway because they'd already had their first day initial appointments and thought that that meant maybe the law wouldn't apply to them. So those people still came in, and that's something that in some ways we're actually encouraging people is if you are not sure if you can still have an abortion in your state, if you have an appointment, contact your clinic, find out. Are you still able to have that appointment? Can you still book an appointment? And the irony of Dobbs being decided on Friday is the fact that the one clinic that's in the center of it is actually now one of the only clinics in the South that can do abortions. The rest of the states all had triggers, but Mississippi still has another 10 days, I believe, before abortion is completely illegal.
Yeah. Some you just sit sometimes and just dumbfounded at the idiocy of some of the things that ends up happening. And I come back to, I don't think that, one, I don't think people really believed that it could be overturned. And I think people are still a little bit in shock that the ground shift has happened, that the dog has caught the car, which is the analogy everyone uses. And I don't think they really thought through what the ramifications were actually going to be. I'm talking with people all the time. I'm getting emails from people all across the country saying, this is what's happening in our state, and this is the fallout. And we're only a couple of days into this nightmare.
We are, and it's only going to get worse because the first thing that they expect is for us to get complacent. They expected us to get angry. They saw us all get angry after the Supreme Court memo leak. They did not think that we could keep up that amount of anger and that amount of disappointment and that much will to fight back. They're hoping that it will burn out again. And when that happens, they're going to push for a full federal ban. I cannot be more clear that if the midterms go against us, if the White House goes against us during the next election there, if the Republicans ever get a full majority over all of the chambers, we will have a federal ban. And then it will not be about, can we get people to New York or California to get an abortion? It will be, can we get people to Canada or Mexico or over to Europe, just like it was pre-Roe.
Yeah, I mean, and this is, I keep saying this is about poor and working class women. Because rich women, they're going to be able to go to Europe to get what they need. It's the poor and the working class who are going to be the ones who suffer the most in all of this, as always, as all of bad conservative policy brings us. So, in looking at this now, people are saying, well, we need to figure out how to navigate around this. Like as my friend was talking about building an underground railroad. You guys actually have a railroad, not underground. You guys are really above board in what you guys do to make sure that people have access to this. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So there's a number of different organizations that exist right now that have been preparing for this for decades. And there's the National Network of Abortion Funds, which hosts funds in every state. And through those funds that are ways that people can call up and make sure that they are getting financial support in order to get an abortion. They can be hooked up to practical support groups, which will offer them transportation or resources, gas cards, hotels, whatever it is that is necessary for a person to get to an abortion. This is something that's been in place for quite some time because even when Roe was still intact and when we still had clinics and legal abortion in every state, many people still had to travel in order to get an abortion. They would be past the first trimester and have to leave their state, or they would be in a state that had just one clinic or two clinics. So this is a system that is already in place, and that for people who want to be a part of it, all they need to do is contact either an abortion fund, a practical support organization like Apiary Practical Support, and give their information. They need to understand that everybody is extraordinarily busy trying to deal with this really sudden seismic shift in the landscape, but they will get a chance to be heard. They will get vetted. They will get a chance to find their own place in the movement in order to be that new spot to be able to help people get from one place to another. But the most important thing is we need to recognize that even with all of the financial resources that can be thrown at somebody, We have people who find it almost impossible to get to their local abortion clinic as is. They are never going to make it out of a state. And in the case of Alabama, they're never going to make it 4 or 5 states over in order to get care. The amount of time off from work or away from family, childcare, if they have a disability, if they are undocumented, there are all these different reasons why a person may not be able to travel out of state in order to get an abortion. So we need to make sure that we're providing resources that help those people as well. We need to look at this as if abortion is indeed a human right and it belongs as a case of bodily autonomy, then all people should have it regardless of whether they are able to get an abortion in a clinic or whether they are trying to manage their own care at home. And when it comes to managing their own care, we need to make sure that there are still safe places for them to go if they are questioning whether they did it properly or if they think that they might have had a complication, to make sure that they don't end up in hospitals or with doctors who might try to investigate them for having done their own miscarriage.
And that's where this goes, because my next line of questioning is you've got this group, and I can foresee a moment in the very near future where anyone along the line, because I watched Kristi Noem give her little spiel on Face the Nation over the weekend, talking about we're not going to go after the mothers at all. It's everyone else that they're going to go after, anyone who may have helped, anyone who may have funded, any doctors who were involved, all of that along the line to make folks like you miserable.
And it's purposeful because it's meant to both isolate any person who is seeking an abortion so that they are afraid, so that everyone is afraid to help that person, and so that they are never able to get assistance. And so one of the things that I encourage people to do in whatever state that they are in, whether it's a red state, a blue state, if they are in a local city, to contact local officials, contact DAs, contact city attorneys, and demand that legislation be passed or a promise be made that said that they will not investigate any poor pregnancy outcome. And the reason that we need to do this is because when we have illegal abortion, any person who has an unsuccessful pregnancy is going to be suspected of having tried to do their own abortion. And in many of these states right now, these are the states that have not expanded Medicaid. They have the worst maternal mortality. There are no doctors. There's no prenatal care. There's no preventative care whatsoever. And so that makes for unhealthy pregnancies, whether they're wanted or not. So we are talking about people who have pregnancies that they want to continue, that are having complications and could still be investigated. And that means not just them, but their families, their other healthcare providers. Anyone could be at risk.
Yeah, see, I see a very dangerous world coming up. And now you've obviously written the book, the handbook for a post-war America, or a post-Roe America.
It feels like war, too.
It does. It's where my mind was. And I hope folks will take a look at it. We'll get links out on social media how folks can take a look at it. Written by Robin Marty. She's the director of operations at the West Alabama Women's Center. As I said, author of the new handbook for a post-Roe America. We'll get that out as well. But, my view into the way I'm thinking about this, and maybe you can help me work through this a little bit, is all of the things that you brought up, the poor health care, the maternity leave, the welfare spending, especially for people at the bottom end of the social safety net that's been ripped away from the working class of this country. I now see conservatives pivoting around to and going and fighting for taxpayer dollars to put into maternity leave, to put into welfare programs, health care, all of that stuff. The major difference being, none of it will be through government programs. It will all be George Bush's faith-based initiatives. This will all be the charlatans and grifters of God Incorporated taking these programs and lining their pockets at the expense of now the people aren't going to get any benefit out of this, but a lot of tax dollars are going to go into it. I'm curious if you think that's part of our future.
Yeah, it's very true. The reason why conservatives strip the social safety net in general is because once you take away everything and any sort of assistance, they think that people will have to turn to God. And so they use their religion as a cudgel to make sure that people are in a place where they can proselytize to them. They do this because in their idea of faith, if a person is poor, that's because they somehow have some sort of failing. And so it's this very prosperity gospel sort of approach towards giving people care, that we can give you care only if you agree to follow our Bible classes or go to this church or do these extra things. We see crisis pregnancy centers all the time. Minnesota, Texas, Michigan, Ohio, that all actually are already being funded by their state local taxes. We've seen them take money from TAMF, temporary assistance for needy families, and send that straight to crisis pregnancy centers. And we've also seen that Texas has been doing this for decades and upped that spending when they passed their 6-week heartbeat ban in September. And all indications from reports is that none of the money is actually going to services for people who are becoming pregnant. They're going to crisis pregnancy centers simply to pay salaries, to throw events. They're not helping people. And I'm going to be completely honest, this surprises me not at all, because we have spent the last decade next door to a crisis pregnancy center here in Alabama, and we have spent so long fighting to get our patients back when they accidentally end up next door. But now we don't have legal abortion. And today we had patients that called us from there because the crisis pregnancy center is no longer, they're apparently too busy to provide free pregnancy tests. And they suggested that the patients come over to us to get them.
Wow. I guess I'm not surprised, but it's one of those things when you hear it, you go, wow.
Yeah.
It's shocking, but again, not surprising. And not surprising that any money that goes into these faith-based initiatives don't actually trickle down to the people who actually need it. Why would I not be surprised in that? But no, this is the future that I do see. Because look, we're basically turning the U.S. into a foreign ministry for a lot of these communities, and that's what frightens me. So the question long term then is, because I do see the anger will start to tamp down over a period of time. How do you then move this in a longer period once people start figuring out how to navigate this a little bit differently? Because everyone's looking for their way. In fact, some of the younger women that I've talked to get their opinions and their thoughts on, how they're reacting and what their anger level is, they all believe it's not a big deal. They're going to be able to figure it out, that they're of sufficient mental capacity and resources that they're going to be able to navigate a system that they don't even know what it looks like yet, but they're confident they're going to be able to do it. So what do you think long term then is the direction?
It's true that they probably will be able to navigate it. People are resourceful. What my concern is, and what I think will happen next, is the fact that obviously, if we've watched the Supreme Court during this last session, this is only one piece of creating a Christian theocracy. And in that Christian theocracy, one where there is no separation of church and state, which is what the Supreme Court officially said today during their ruling over the prayer in the football field, we have a court that has essentially said that precedent doesn't exist. When they refuse to actually do anything about the very, very unconstitutional bounty hunter aspect of the Texas heartbeat ban, they showed that they have no issue with citizen enforcement of law that takes law out of actual courts and judges. What we are looking at is essentially the beginning of a Christian dominionist country that will use its power and resources essentially to force everybody into following their doctrine under the guise that religious rights trump any other sort of rights. I believe that is the point in which even all young people, all people who don't feel that they're engaged in politics, once they are directly confronted with that, I think that is when things will really start to change. Because the one thing that we do know is that in America, church going and people who identify as religious has gone down every single year. People have become more and more outside of the church, seeing themselves as not a part of organized religion, and that the very devout Christian faith-based people are becoming a smaller and smaller minority, and that's why they're scared, and that's why they're making these changes right now. And so that's how they keep themselves in power. So we just need to recognize at that tipping point that we are the majority and that we have to come together. And maybe that's the one thing that we can get everybody to come together under, because it seems like every other division just keeps us apart.
Yeah. But, like every authoritarian, fascistic kind of group, they've got to have something that controls you. And I believe when they start pouring money into these groups, the only way you're going to get certain things is if you're one of the approved. And that means going back to those approved faith-based initiative groups, which I keep coming back to. That's where they see their power base going, and that's frightening to me.
It's terrifying.
But Robin, I appreciate the thoughts. I'm hopeful that we navigate this. Last question I've got for you: what should people do tomorrow? What's the marching order going forward?
The marching order tomorrow is the most important thing that they can do is make sure that their state has expanded Medicaid. I cannot make it more clear how much we need healthcare in this country. Make sure that you have a state that's expanded Medicaid. If they have done that, start the fight for universal healthcare, because we need that just as much. People should not have healthcare that is dependent on where they work or who they work for or what their income level is. Healthcare is the biggest burden and debt. Healthcare debt is the biggest debt that most people carry. We need to stop for-profit healthcare. That is the most important thing that we can do. And I feel that once that happens, we will also be able to tamp down on some of the things that are faith-based, because that is one of the ways that churches are getting so much of their money, is through the fact that they own a large portion of the hospitals. They own a large portion and control a large portion of our healthcare. And that is why, honestly, it's getting so much worse.
Yeah, I keep going back to my my years in Catholic school, and when we read the Bible and all of that, I think of a for-profit healthcare system, and I think of that old "What would Jesus do?" Healing the sick, but only for profit.
He never would.
Only for a profit. But Robin, I appreciate the time. I hope you'll come back and talk with us again as this continues, because I know it's not going anywhere. Thanks
Anytime.
so much.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Robin Marty, Director of Operations there at the West Alabama Women's Center. Make sure you check out her book, The New Handbook for a Post-Roe America. She wrote that back in 2019. How'd she know? Well, she read the tea leaves like everybody else. When you start seeing who Trump was putting on the Supreme Court, other than Susan Collins, everyone knew. Back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. For working people, come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1880. That was the day that Helen Keller was born in Tuscumbia, Alabama. 2 years later, she lost both her sight and hearing due to an illness. With the help of a teacher by the name of Anne Sullivan, Helen learned how to communicate again. Her inspiring story was retold in the play and movie, The Miracle Workers. Keller spent the rest of her life advocating for people with disabilities, as well as a woman's right to vote and a woman's right to birth control. But did you know she was also an outspoken supporter of the cause of labor? Helen was a socialist and a member of the Industrial Workers of the World Union. In 1912, Helen sent a check to support textile workers on strike in Little Falls, New York. She accompanied the check with a letter that captured her commitment to the labor movement. She wrote of the women out on strike, quote, "Their cause is my cause. If they are denied a living wage, I also am denied. While they are industrial slaves, I cannot be free. My hunger is not satisfied while they are unfed. I cannot enjoy the good things of life which have come to me if they are hindered and neglected. I want all the workers of the world to have sufficient money to provide the normal standard of living. A decent home, healthful surroundings, opportunity for education and recreation. I want them all to have the same blessings I have. I, deaf and blind, have been helped to overcome many obstacles. I want them to be helped generously in a struggle which resembles my own in many ways. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So as I said, this isn't going to go away anytime soon, and I'm sure it's going to be very, very painful as it continues. Let's quick go to the phones. Got Frank from Oklahoma on line 1. Frank, what's on your mind, brother?
Oh, what's going on, bud? How are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Hey, let me ask you something.
Hit me.
Hey, is your mama...
You almost got something out there, Frank. You know, you want to be a jack. Almost got me. This is what I like, people of minimal intelligence, you know, calling and saying stupid stuff. Doing Oklahoma proud. Thanks for the call, Frank. Appreciate it, buddy. But this is one of those issues that, you know, I think is I had someone, you know, tell me yesterday that, you know, this is only a woman's issue. And I go, it is. Yeah, and women should be leading this, but this is also a men's issue. Because, well, you know, we've got daughters, we've got wives, we've got girlfriends, we've got people that we care about. And ultimately what we need to do is, I don't want to use the frame of protect, but this is part of that. And as a father, my number one instinct is, how do I protect them? How do I keep them safe? From the moment that they were born, the moment I looked in their eyes and said, what am I going to do to protect this child? This is part of that. They shouldn't have to live in the world that their grandmother or great-grandmother or, you know, that they had to live in. Now, do I want them to have abortions? No, I don't. I want them to lead healthy, happy lives. I want them to make good choices. I want them to do all the things that I think you do. But in the event that something happens, I want them to be safe. And this is where I come down. I am pro-safety. And this is where I think our court has really screwed this up. They are putting people in dangerous situations. They are harming a generation for nothing more than their political ideology and their faith-based ideology. This wasn't a legal decision. This was an ideological decision, as all of these have been. This is their religious beliefs. And it's the one thing that they decide with more than they decide with corporate interests, is their religion. It's scary times, folks. Scary times.
Today I'm calling on Congress to suspend the federal gas tax for the next 90 days.
President Biden seeks temporary tax cut to lower prices at the pump. Parts of the Arctic warming 5 times faster than the rest of the planet, plus
several countries have reported receiving significantly less Russian gas than what would be expected in the coming weeks.
International Energy Agency warns Europe Russia could shut down gas exports this winter.
All of those warnings and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
You heard President Biden asking for a federal gas tax holiday, so how are you going to vote on this proposal?
I'll vote no.
Republicans never met a tax they didn't want to cut, unless cutting it would help the American people and a Democratic president. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, you would think that Republicans would be delighted about Joe Biden calling for a tax cut, but not so much?
Yep, not so much. President Biden on Wednesday asked Congress to enact a 3-month suspension of the federal gasoline tax, that's roughly 18 cents per gallon, and also asked states to suspend their gas taxes or provide some other kind of relief to consumers as a way to temporarily reduce retail gas prices.
Retail gas gouging?
Now, I fully understand that a gas tax holiday alone is not going to fix the problem, but it will provide families some immediate relief, just a little bit of breathing room as we continue working to bring down prices for the long haul.
Breathing room. That's an ironic way to put an incentive to sell more gas.
Republicans in Congress are practically giddy, eager to block the concept because they believe paying for Americans at the pump will benefit Republicans politically in the midterm elections.
How unlike them.
But critics say it doesn't address the root causes of high gasoline prices, which are Russia's invasion of Ukraine, constrained refining capacity, and oil companies price gouging consumers while pulling in record profits.
Yep.
The critics also note oil companies and gas stations can simply pocket most of the money without lowering consumer prices. Biden hit back against Republicans' false claims about his energy policies, noting that domestic production is now higher on average than during the Trump administration.
Go figure.
He also noted the oil industry is shoveling profits to shareholders rather than reopening refinery capacity that was shut down during the pandemic. Long-term, suspending the federal gas tax reduces revenue going into the Highway Trust Fund for improving roads and bridges. It all underscores the consequences of America being so very dependent on oil.
Yes, it does.
And, of course, despite the record high gas prices, AAA says a record number of Americans plan to hit the road for the July 4th weekend.
Of course.
Also dangerously dependent on fossil fuels is Europe. The International Energy Agency this week warned European leaders to develop contingency plans now in case Russia completely shuts off all natural gas exports this winter. Its director said that Russia's recent reductions in shipments under claims of so-called technical issues are actually, quote, strategic, making it harder for European countries to fill up their gas storage now, increasing Russia's leverage come winter.
Yep.
In other news, a new study finds that portions of the Arctic are warming 5 to 7 times faster than the rest of the planet, much faster than previously thought due to man-made climate change, which, of course, is caused by burning fossil fuels. The Arctic matters because emerging scientific evidence links Arctic warming to changes in the jet stream, which in turn increase the frequency of blocking patterns that intensify extreme weather in North America, Europe, and Asia.
So climate change is causing the Arctic to warm really fast, and when the Arctic warms really fast, that makes climate change even worse.
Basically. But some good news.
Not a moment too soon.
The Biden administration has reached an historic agreement with 5 Native American tribes over the management of the Bears Ears National Monument in Utah. The unprecedented cooperative agreement gives the tribes, who have inhabited the region for centuries, more input in the day-to-day management of the lands. It is a big step in repairing the federal government's relationship with the tribes.
Nice. Wasn't that the national monument that Donald Trump tried to pretty much kill?
Yes. And finally, a new analysis of the global offshore wind industry by Renewable UK finds that the global boom in offshore wind projects has been, quote, nothing short of staggering, with projects in 2022 that are double the capacity of just 1 year ago. China has the biggest offshore wind project pipeline in the report, with the UK and the US not too far behind.
Well, it's nice to be not too far behind for a change. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So our quote of the day from Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren on the Supreme Court, she says, this court has lost legitimacy. They have burned whatever legitimacy they may still have had after their gun decision, after their voting decision, after their union decision. They just took the last of it and set a torch to it with the Roe versus Wade opinion. And look, I agree. And this is this court. Remember John Roberts said, I'm going to call balls and strikes, believe in stare decisis, believe in decided law. In fact, they all said that all across the board. And now, well, again, they've told us no law is decided. Ideologically, they're going to decide the future. And look, I still think one of the worst cases is yet to come. It's the EPA one against West Virginia. That's going to preempt our ability to do anything on climate. That's still yet to come. So, yay, big fun coming on the horizon. But here to share some thoughts on the most recent abomination, this Roe versus Wade decision, I've asked Rachel Coyle to come talk with us. She's the communications director at Innovation Ohio. InnovationOhio.org is their website. Rachel, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So, I look at this court and I think Elizabeth Warren's right. I think this court has basically torched any legitimacy of being a co-equal branch of government. I think they've far overstepped their ability to be looked at as any arbiter of the Constitution or of law or legitimacy at all. They are strictly a right-wing Christian corporate conservative ideological court.
Yep. At least 3 of these justices got up during their confirmation hearings, under oath, hand on the Bible, and said that Roe versus Wade was settled law, that it's decades old and they can't overturn precedent. And then here they are just going against everything they said under oath and taking away some of our personal freedoms.
And what's interesting is, you're listening to some of the little dribbles coming out of the court, and Roberts didn't want to go this far. He was more of an incrementalist, which you kind of knew he was because he's thinking about his legacy. His legacy is radical change, possibly the beginning of ripping this country in half. Because I think Josh Hawley is right. I think this is going to create an environment where red states are going to get much redder and blue states are going to get bluer.
Oh yeah, one of the next things we're gonna see is states trying to prevent the travel of their citizens to another state to get an abortion or get access to care. And then you're gonna see the blue states trying to pass laws to protect their own doctors and care providers from those red states. It's gonna become 2 different worlds.
We are truly going to become 2 Americas. And, as I said earlier in the program, I have a friend who's on a board of directors of a major university. And I said, what are you going to do if Pennsylvania becomes a no rights state? What are you going to do when more than half of your student body are females? What are you going to do as the Northeast, as Massachusetts and New York and New Jersey start going, hey, no, don't go to Pennsylvania schools. You have no rights there. Come to our states and then live in our states. What's going to happen to the universities? What's going to happen to the state as you lose a large portion of young women?
Oh yeah, the red states are going to suffer in so many ways we haven't even thought about yet. The number one economic decision that a person can make in their whole life is when and how to become a parent. And if we take that away from people, but only in certain states, those states are going to be the ones where people are poorer and not able to lift themselves out of poverty. And the blue states are going to have a wildly different outcome. And you're right, they're going to have a lot more young people in them. Yeah, no, I look at myself. My mother got pregnant with me at 16. Mm-hmm. And we lived in what is considered abject poverty. I grew up in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland. There was no food in the house at the end of the month. We did not have much, if anything. In fact, in our neighborhood, people used to steal from each other at the end of the month because they were robbing each other for food. Mm-hmm. I now live in a neighborhood with doctors and lawyers, and I give credit for my union card and the work that I do. But we didn't have children until I was in my mid-30s because we were able to make those choices. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we're ready for a population being forced as my mother was. This was 1967. There was no choice for her. This what it was what it was. And her life was much more difficult than it had to be. Oh, yeah. And most people who have abortions now, we know from the stats, are already parents. who maybe they, have got a few kids at home and they're worried about how to put food on the table already. And if you add another kid to the mix, we're going to have Ohio kids literally going hungry even more than they are now. And it's really hard to picture what's going to happen next.
Now, Ohio's, again, one of the crazy states. You've got you got trigger laws, right?
Ohio does not have a trigger law. So we have a 6-week ban that's now in place. They put that in place just a couple hours after the Roe versus Wade decision was done. So now Ohio bans abortion when a fetal heartbeat is detected, which is about 5 or 6 weeks, which is before most people know they're pregnant, conveniently. So Ohio has pretty much banned abortion. They're probably going to do that full ban here in the next couple of months. So and it won't have any exemptions based on what we're seeing.
Now, you as the communications director at Innovation Ohio, you guys are doing polling on the ground. You're talking to women. I have a lot of my Democratic strategist friends who are saying, look, there's going to be a major ground shift of women leaving the Republican Party. Suburban women are going to flee like crazy. Are you seeing that? I mean, Ohio is leaning a red state, gerrymandered horribly, so solidly a red state, but voting wise, just leans a little red. Does this move it back into the purple kind of category? Maybe even leans maybe a little the other way?
If anything is going to do it, it's going to be this. Our polls show across the board, and the national polls do too, that people support the right to abortion. They didn't want Roe overturned. And a lot of people, especially who supported abortion rights, said that this is going to be a motivator for them to vote. It's going to be really interesting, though, because we had all those voters, especially like you said, in the suburbs, who voted for Biden because they didn't like Donald Trump, but then they voted for Republicans all the way down the ballot. It'll be interesting to see if those folks come out and vote Democrat all the way down the ballot now that they're angry at something that can be controlled in their state. It'll be interesting to see.
Now you've got a couple of really important races going on in your state. You've got like Pennsylvania, you got a gubernatorial and a Senate race going on. Here in this state right now, the Democrats are just up a little bit. John Fetterman up a little bit over Dr. Quack, and Josh Shapiro up over a little bit above the Nazi Benito Mastriano. But in your state, it's kind of the other way around. You've got your Republicans just a touch over Tim Ryan and the former mayor of Dayton. How's that dynamic, do you think, going to shift with this in play?
They both are really important candidates. Tim Ryan, for folks who don't know, is running for what is an open seat because the Republican who holds the seat isn't running for re-election. It's always easier to pick up a seat where you're not running against an incumbent. So he's got a real chance to be that 51st vote in the Senate. Then Nan Whaley would be Ohio's first woman governor, which is very exciting. And both of them have been really outspoken for abortion rights, so we'll see how that goes. We also have 3 Supreme Court races in Ohio that are going to be key because state level is where these abortion fights are going to be happening from now on, at least until something happens again at the federal level. So those 3 Supreme Court races in Ohio are they're literally going to be life or death. So we're going to have to see if folks come out and vote all the way down.
See, now the Supreme Court seats in your state have got to be one of the most interesting because, clearly the Republicans don't care about your law or the state Supreme Court because they did nothing on their district setup and basically flip their nose at the state Supreme Court multiple times. Do they pay a penalty at the polls for this? Because the voters of Ohio said, look, we don't want to be gerrymandered. We want there to be fair lines drawn. But the pathway to get to these gerrymandered districts have been nothing but corrupt. In fact, Ohio is probably right now king of the most corrupt states, based on the things that I've been saying.
Yeah, it's not a title we love to hold, but we do seem to hold it right now. And yes, I mean, the Republicans in Ohio literally just openly ignored the state laws and the Constitution on gerrymandering, and they just did whatever they wanted, and they figured they wouldn't get held accountable. And so it's going to be the job of the people to remind voters for the next few months that happened, to make sure that someone holds them accountable at the ballot in November.
No, I mean, we're in interesting and bizarre territory. So what? As you guys are out talking to people now, because look, this just happened. What's the messaging going forward? Because look, I blame Democrats for a lot of what's going on here. They had years to make this legal. They had years to make this law. They had years to pass legislation. They had years to do a bunch of stuff, and yet hadn't done it. And Republicans have out-legislated them in numerous ways, because you look across the state, you've got all these states with trigger laws. You've got all these states that are moving towards getting stuff done, while Democrats just kind of laid back at, well, we got the Supreme Court decision. What are you moving toward? What's the message forward? What are you guys working on going forward?
So I think the main message going forward is literally just going to be that you have a choice between the Republicans who took your personal freedoms away and the Democrats who want to give them back. It's really going to be that simple. And we haven't had enough Democrats in the Senate to pass a law allowing for abortion rights at the federal level. At the state level, I think you're right, though. I think Democrats haven't focused enough on picking up those state seats that are all important, and Republicans figured out a while back that all the power is at the state level. So now hopefully Democrats are going to be able to catch up and run folks for those local and state seats and make some changes at the state level while we wait for federal changes.
Yeah, and this is also for me, while it is a legislative political part, this is this moment where I keep asking my Democratic friends and my activist friends, this is an organizing opportunity like none other. This is an opportunity for organized labor to get involved in this and get out ahead of it. We organize workplaces around, hey, our employer is going to mandate and access to this kind of thing in their contracts. Are you going to inculcate this in your contractual language? This is an opportunity to mobilize from the bottom up, not just wish and hope and pray for hope and change, but to actually demand it from the bottom up, and not have hero worship for politicians. They're just tools to get what we need to be demanding. And what we need to do is we need to be organizing and pushing them.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So many major corporations have said that they're going to start including in their benefits package, holidays or days off or paid leave in order to go to another state to access the care you need. And every single worker could be asking their employer to do the same thing. It could be, like you said, part of the contract. And those types of things that we're in completely uncharted territory are where we're going to have to head now. And it's going to have to be from the bottom up, like you said.
No, but this is stuff that I've been saying for years. This is where, if we can't get it legislatively, if we can't get our elected leaders to demand things get done, like family medical leave. Look, we should have paid family medical leave one way or another. If we can't get it done legislatively, we should be forcing employers to do it. And this is how we do it, from working people demanding it. And we're seeing the power of workers right now. We're seeing Starbucks workers and Amazon workers and Apple workers and REI workers. We're seeing people organizing and demanding now. This is part of this. And this is an opportunity to have a generation of young women go, you know what? They just took my rights away at the Supreme Court. Somebody's going to make sure I get my rights. Well, going to be you, corporate America.
Absolutely. And it's just another reminder that this has nothing to do with the babies, as the claim is, because if this were really about life, we would have those things at the federal level. We'd have paid leave, we'd have healthcare, we'd be dealing with maternal mortality rates and all of this. It's just all about power. And you can see that in all these other policies that we're going to have to fight for at job to job level instead of federally.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. So last question I've got for you. What's the marching order for tomorrow? What do women wake up tomorrow? What do you want men to do? Look, I've had a bunch of people tell me, sit down, man. You know your place, man. And I go, yeah, I know my place. My place is, I'm going to be supportive, but also I'm the father of 2 daughters. I damn well want them to be safe. So I'm going to be vocal, and I'm going to be loud, and I'm going to be out in full force, because I want them to be safe and have the same abilities and same rights that their mother and my generation have. So what's the advice to especially guys like me?
Absolutely. And that's it. It's to be vocal. Talk to people in your life who may not be political, who may not have heard much about this issue, and tell them what's going on and who exactly is to blame, because this is going to have to be an issue that we keep talking about through November and beyond. And then, of course, obviously, there's the second part of this, which is that we have to donate to and support candidates who are going to fight for personal freedoms and abortion rights. And so we're going to have to first let everybody know what's going on and then actually get those folks elected.
There you go. Rachel, I appreciate the time. Good stuff. Keep up the great work. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
Thank you for having me on.
Anytime. Rachel Coyle, Communications Director there at Innovation Ohio. Check out their website, innovationohio.org. We'll get links out on social media. You can check out the work that they do. If you miss any portion of the program, download the podcast. You can get that wherever you get your favorite podcasts, from iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, everywhere in between. Quick break, right back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You got a thought, question, comment? Want to chime in? Want to hear it? So one of the things that I've been banging around, this idea that conservatism has really destroyed this country. And, you know, most of my conservative friends, you know, very, very angry folk. The idea of happiness, something they're opposed to. And it goes back to, you know, Thomas Jefferson. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, something that I believe in, something that I've lived my entire life by. It's one of the, you go, do you have a motto? Do you have a mantra? Yeah, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Live your best life. Pursue your happiness. And do it freely. Don't worry about me, worry about yourself. As long as I'm not infringing on your rights, we're going to be good. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. They, not so much. Happiness, bad thing in their world. Understand, the conservative mindset was never about life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. It was supposed to be, and for those who remember learning about Jefferson's writings, it was supposed to be life, liberty, pursuit of private property. And that's the conservative mantra, private property. And we've been hearing that a lot lately in conservative circles. Life, liberty, pursuit of private property. And I look at these decisions that are coming down, the guns, about private property, you know, women's bodies, private property. It's about their ownership. It's about the original intentists, their view of the Constitution, which was all about the mindset of mine. You know, white guys over 21, land owning white men over 21. Those were the folks who controlled things. They could vote, they could own land, they could do things. They were counted as full people. I know, novel concept, right? But they had all the rights. And there are those conservatives today that's the gold standard. So overturning Roe was just one more way to grab back their property. To grab back what they believe is theirs, is their birthright. And when you think about it in that frame, it's a scary world we're heading towards. This kind of top-down, kind of theocratic world that they're putting in front of us. Now, the Supreme Court today came down with another another decision. And look, nobody is surprised by this most recent decision. Nobody. Did I mention nobody's surprised? Evidently, this football coach was I guess let go because they would have prayers at the 50-yard line after the game. I personally never had a problem with it. Every football game I ever played, this happened. Was it right? Probably not. When you stop and you think about it from the idea of separation of church and state, is a public school setting, is that the right place? When I played football, the coaches always brought in the priest to pray before the game, and then at the end, on the field, did the same thing. I gotta wonder, however, since we are moving into a different world, I gotta wonder if imposing his religious beliefs, and our coach did the same thing, if it would be different if at the end of the game everyone was mandated to get out their prayer rug and head east. If it were a different religion. I mean, this is the kind of thing it's very bizarre to me. This wasn't just the coach saying his private prayer as it's been framed. I've been in those circles. The entire team's in the circle, the coach is in the middle, and there's bow your head, and everybody better bow your head because the coaches are paying attention. The peer pressure is there. So this idea that, well, it was just a private nonsense. You know what this was. But again, not surprised. Now the Supreme Court, says, well, we're not pressuring them. Really? You don't think the peer pressure of everybody there, the coaches' expectations, you don't think that's pressure? And what if you are of a different faith? And this is one of those things where you go, I'm tolerant. But there's a moment where you go, now you're just imposing your will. Now you're doing this and it's performative. This is my problem with all of these displays of religiosity, because they're never followed up with acts. They're never followed up with the good deeds. They're never followed up with making lives better. They're just words and performances. And this is what we get out of the conservative movement. Lots of political theater, lots of projection, lots of performative displays. But when it comes down to really helping, when it comes down to making lives better, as Robin said earlier, they look at poor people like somehow it's their fault. Somehow it's their flaw. Somehow it's a punishment. Fear where we're heading, folks. We have a theocratic Supreme Court, and we are moving full tilt boogie towards a theocracy, to where the only way you're going to get help from that government is if you're in the right line and you're saying the right words and you're bowing your head and bending your knee at the right moment. So for all my conservative friends who are worried about, oh my gosh, my liberty and my freedom, just wait for what you have unleashed. Just wait for what is coming for you, because it's what you want. That's the scary part of where we're going. Quick break, right back. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1880. That was the day that Helen Keller was born in Tuscumbia, Alabama. 2 years later, she lost both her sight and hearing due to an illness. With the help of a teacher by the name of Anne Sullivan, Helen learned how to communicate again. Her inspiring story was retold in the play and movie The Miracle Workers. Keller spent the rest of her life advocating for people with disabilities, as well as a woman's right to vote and a woman's right to birth control. But did you know she was also an outspoken supporter of the cause of labor? Helen was a socialist and a member of the Industrial Workers of the World Union. In 1912, Helen sent a check to support textile workers on strike in Little Falls, New York. She accompanied the check with a letter that captured her commitment to the labor movement. She wrote of the women out on strike, quote, "Their cause is my cause. If they are denied a living wage, I also am denied. While they are industrial slaves, I cannot be free. My hunger is not satisfied while they are unfed. I cannot enjoy the good things of life which have come to me if they are hindered and neglected. I want all the workers of the world to have sufficient money to provide the normal standard of living, a decent home, healthful surroundings, opportunity for education and recreation. I want them all to have the same blessings I have. I, deaf and blind, have been helped to overcome many obstacles. I want them to be helped generously in a struggle which resembles my own in many ways." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
What's the most damning thing about America's healthcare system? The system. While our doctors, nurses, and technicians are among the best in the world, the system itself is not even designed for care, but for the constant expansion of profits for insurance giants, drug makers, hospital chains, system managers, financiers, and other voracious components of the medical industry. For starters, ponder that term, medical industry. The ethical essence of healthcare is that it's a human right, essential to every person and to the common good. But corporate elites now claim to own our health by shriveling the concept of care to just another product available to those who can pay whatever monopolistic industrialists demand. But this rationing of care meant the industry was leaving a mass market of millions of patients untapped. So industry bean counters made a critical adjustment. Lower prices? Don't get silly. Instead, the system is pushing medical debt as the ticket to care. So you come in sick or injured, scared, dazed, and suddenly you're hooked up to a long-term medical payment plan. A recent survey by the Kaiser Family Foundation revealed that more than 100 million Americans, including 41% of all adults, are in hock because of the skyrocketing costs of the so-called care industry. This includes debt that patients owe directly to the system, plus money borrowed from family or friends or put on credit cards. An analysis in 2019 estimated that families were being hit with at least $195 billion in payments for medical borrowing, a number driven dramatically higher since the pandemic. As one doctor angrily said of industrial health care, debt is no longer just a bug in our system, it is one of the main products. We have a healthcare system almost perfectly designed to create debt. This is Jim Hightower saying, how sick is that?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So over the weekend, Rudy Giuliani had a grocery store worker arrested for the audacity of touching him on the back. I loved the original story, though. Rudy Giuliani was assaulted. In fact, he was assaulted so badly that he could have fallen, and if Rudy wasn't in better shape, he would have fallen and cracked open his skull, and he would have died. The guy walked up, patted him on the back to get his attention, and then called him a scumbag. Called him the scumbag that he is. So I don't have a problem with it, but he was arrested and charged with a misdemeanor, which has Rudy all up in arms because should have been a felony, I guess, in Rudy's world. Oh, jeez, crazy. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the vicious assault of Rudy Giuliani. I've asked our good friend Bob Ney to come talk with us. Bob's a former Ohio congressman and political analyst. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thank you, Rick.
Brutal assault it was, Bob. Brutal, vicious, horrible assault.
Well, New York has turned into the Wild Wild West, is what he said. You know that.
Yeah.
Right.
You look, the Supreme Court wants it to be the Wild West. It wants everybody carrying a gun.
Right. I first heard about it, and of course, I don't care who it is. You're not supposed to be, quote, assaulted. And then I watched the video, and I'm like, okay, he didn't. Yeah. I mean, maybe the guy shouldn't have touched him today. If you sprinkle water on somebody, you've assaulted them. I understand how things have changed. But I watched very closely the video multiple times. He wasn't pushed forward. It was more of a, hey, you scumbag type of thing.
Yeah, it was more a touch him, get his attention. Yeah.
He almost fell down and died.
I didn't see the almost fall down part.
No, I'm saying he turned it into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Weird world we live in. I guess Rudy's now a Karen.
But he could have fallen and died. He had an elderly uncle that died from a fall.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I guess somebody tapped his uncle on the back and then he fell. I don't know. Rudy Giuliani, I remember back, of course, as everybody does, he was America's mayor. I mean, 911, he handled that. And, we went up to New York and had the official meeting of the Congress, on the anniversary. And Giuliani was there. And then one of the first things I remember that made me start to say, wow, he took money. I think, if I want to quote right, Rick, I think 100 or 150,000 from the Mojahedin cult group, and it was on the official terror list. And he took that money from them and went over and spoke in France to them and things. And I thought, here's the mayor of the city that had the terror attack, and at the time the group was official terror list. John Bolton was involved with them, if that tells you anything. And at that point in time, I thought, what's he doing? Who's he linking up with? And then it got worse from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy that you think like you said, he was America's mayor, and not only that, not only was he America's mayor, he was the guy who took on the freaking mob. He was the guy who took on people like Trump. Sure. He wasn't the one advising the criminals. Wow, how the mighty hath fallen.
Right.
Crazy.
No doubt.
Speaking of Trump, hearing tomorrow. I was not expecting a hearing. I don't think anyone was expecting a hearing.
Right.
I guess they got John Eastman's cell phones. How much of that do you think has to do with Eastman? How much of that you think has got to do with new information? How much do you think it's got to do with this documentary? Maybe there's some documentary footage of Trump, blurting out statements of "I don't care, find me votes." Maybe there's the smoking gun moment. What are we expecting?
Well, I think the strategy that the committee had, Rick, was decent. You and I and some people talked last night on the podcast, and it was done better than I thought it was going to be done. And then they had this brief recess, which I thought was a hiccup due to some divisions, but it ended up they had some method for what they were doing, and they planned to be outside of the public eye this week. And to me, what they were doing made sense. The House isn't in business this week. Lawmakers all around the country and around the world. And then this would also give, because of the volume of information, the committee staff, investigators, et cetera, can continue to, be able to see what they've got, where they go from here. But then, all of a sudden, there's an unplanned addition. So I think what we can think about this is that there's going to be, I don't want to say the silver bullet, but there's going to be a lot of moxie to this hearing.
Is it possible
to bring it back up like this?
Is it possible the DOJ is about ready to drop an indictment?
I mean, you never know with the DOJ.
Yeah, because my first thought was,
never know.
My first thought was, is it possible the DOJ is about ready that they had to hurry up and get something out so that they could hand it over? That maybe there's an indictment coming.
I mean, you just don't know. Now, my old congressional hat tells me this. There's something that's there. They found it's new. Now, it might be old information, but it's new to them. And if they don't this is what I think, because, again, people are on recess, and their motives were good for holding this off. I think they have found something, and they are going to get it out there, because if they don't, it's going to get out there.
Yeah.
Without them. You know?
Okay, so they just...
That's what I think.
They don't want to hold their water and hope... They don't want someone else to leak it out. They want...
It'll leak. And it's not the matter of ego here or pride or pride of authorship. Look, like anything,
No,
if they have information and it leaks, you can't control the way information comes out.
Yep.
And, once a lie starts, it becomes reality. So it's better if they have something to do this, convene something they didn't plan to do, and then they can control how that information is presented versus somebody... Well, Supreme Court leak. I mean, that's a great example, Supreme Court leak, and how it was, spun that who leaked this, not what was leaked, but who leaked this. So I think that there's something there, Rick. I really do.
It's going to be interesting. Now, Fox, the F channel, has reported this Michael Stenger guy, who was the Senate Sergeant of Arms, who was in charge of the Senate and security on the day of the Capitol riot. He has died. Don't know what the cause, don't know anything around it. Seems a little fishy. Any thoughts?
I don't know. He was the Senate Sergeant of Arms, and he's died, and that's all I've heard about it. I don't know, what the reason or what happened.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to see what the next statement is, but all they said is...
I mean, like anything, if you were the Sergeant of Arms and that happened in the Capitol and you've died, it's going to make speculation. Did he die of, heart attack, COVID, or is there some unknown cause? So obviously with him being who he is and what happened with him, then there's going to be definitely this will be looked into, no question.
Just got an email from John, said Hillary Clinton did it. Jesus.
Oh, my.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that. I guarantee Hillary Clinton did not do it. You stop and think about it. All the crimes, all the things that she's been accused of, she's a criminal mastermind.
Yeah, and it would be kept very busy, I would say. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean... just a criminal mastermind.
By the way, there's a whole new slew of things that are being sent by people, and I actually know one of the people that has been sending this, and I've actually sent him a message of, what's going on with you? Who are you around? These are some of the most bizarre, and it goes beyond politics, naming prominent people that are really good people that are involved in all this insidious, secret Kabbalah stuff, and I just notice more and more of it, and it's freaky.
Yeah, this is all that stuff that's been coming out of the Q community for a while. Everyone's a pedophile. Everyone's in a secret cabal. Everyone's part of the intelligentsia and the global conspiracy and the global pedophile ring that's running the world. It's kind of nuts.
Right.
Kind of nuts. I wanted to get your thoughts on a New York judge who ruled non-citizens voting unconstitutional. I actually think this is the right thing. But I'm curious your thoughts on this New York State judge's decision.
You mean it's unconstitutional? I didn't see the ruling.
Yeah, well, New York did this thing that I'm going, why would you do this? But in
you
municipal
mean on the
elections,
non-citizens voting?
In municipal elections, they wanted to allow non-citizens to vote in local elections.
Right.
And I remember going, why now would you throw this in there? Why open this can of worms?
Right.
And now the judge has shot this down, saying, no, that's not constitutional.
Right. The judge struck down the law that was passed, I think, by New York Council, correct?
Yeah. Well,
it was going to give thousands of people the ability to vote. And when we created the Help America Vote Act, and it was voted on, had a large vote, of course, overwhelming vote. We have an attestation there. Everybody in the country now, when you sign your name, if you read the print below, you're attesting that you're a citizen of the United States.
Right.
We had an investigation of one of the elections, which we sided with the incumbent. But during that process, and we painstakingly went through, name after name after name. We didn't take boxes and hide them. With Democrats and Republicans, we went through the names. We did find at that point in time, I think it was 700 and some people who were not citizens of the United States. We came to a bipartisan agreement that we agreed that call me old-fashioned, but you ought to be a citizen to vote,
Yeah.
And so that's why we created that attestation later on. So when you sign, if you're not a citizen, the local election boards, Republicans and Democrats alike, will be able to pursue it if they have, just cause to do that. And we were pretty well attacked by a couple of small groups who at least sat down, I'll give them credit, and said, we think non-citizens ought to vote. And I'm like, well, I don't think I can fly over to certain countries and go vote, So, like I said, call me old-fashioned, but I think the precedent's there. And I think the judge probably saved New York Council from itself.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just one of those things. They're talking 800,000 to 1 million people.
And the timing of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just
not good.
I remember saying at the time, why would you pursue this?
Why would you do it, right?
Especially at a time when you got Trump running around going, see, all these people who are undocumented or illegal are voting. Why would you do this? You're just giving them a talking point.
We have a great country. You go through a process, whether it's asylum or whether you come on a visa or a marriage visa, whatever you do, and you go through a process, and then you become a citizen and you vote. You can still, as a non-citizen, participate in community events. You can participate on government panels. You can, be part of city council groups and think tanks and school boards and meetings. But the voting part, you just ought to be a citizen. So I think, like I said, the judge probably saved the council from themselves.
Yeah. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Bob Ney, former congressman, political analyst. You've got a thought, question, comment, chime in, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. So the Roe thing, it's been a couple of days. Any thoughts so far on the reaction that you're seeing?
Well, yes, a couple of things. One, I'm watching political people, for example, Arkansas Governor Hutchinson is now saying the law he signed, which did not have exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother, which is, as we know it, the Hyde Amendment after Henry Hyde, a longtime congressman who's deceased. And we would, in a lot of cases, the Hyde Amendment was put in by, agreement by everybody to have, and Arkansas law didn't have it. And then, of course, it now kicks in. And so, I'm watching political people start to say, well, it's the state that lacks all race, lacks all in Nevada. He's saying, well, really not much changed because. So all of that now is going towards the focus of these individual elections and how people are going to react to it. Now, on the Republican side, the Republicans are saying, well, the state will speak, et cetera. And by the way, we've got to keep the focus on the economy and, where this quote belongs. On the Democratic side, there's activism, and of course there are protests that are around the country. I think it's yet to be seen how those will continue, with what type of volume they will continue with, and how people will keep that movement going into the general election. I do, and you and I talked about this. I talked about this today to somebody who asked me my opinion. I do think, and I've tried to ask a few young people here and there what they think, but I do believe that a lot of young people who may not like this ruling don't have the intensity of feeling that women who are 75, 70, 65, 60 would have, who can go back to the 70s and remember, what this was like. So we'll see how the younger people will become activists. the other phase two that's just going to start into is how can I get a morning after pill? What ways are there or aren't there in my state, around this? How the doctor's going to react to this entire situation with life of the mother. I mean, there's a whole myriad of things that are going to begin through the process now, and we're going to see all kinds of stories out there eventually about a lot of strife and how people try to figure this out.
Yeah, we're definitely in for a rough couple of years here, and this isn't going to be short term. I mean, this is going to be a couple of years. This is going to be shocking. This is going to be angering. This is going to be life and death for a lot of people.
Right. I think the Republicans would like to tell Clarence Thomas, please go on a vacation somewhere. Take Jenny with you. Go away for a couple of years.
Go get the RV and go for a trip.
Well, he's now stirred up the entire LGBTQ community, and you have people coming out, including Lindsey Graham, saying, "Oh no, it's not going to happen. Contraception is not going to happen," because Thomas keeps saying, "Okay, here we go. This is next," and a lot of people, in that community now are becoming alarmed over. So there's a lot of interaction that's going to go on. This is a part of the election process, frankly, that most elected Republicans, I'm not going to say constituencies like Right to Life, but most elected Republicans really, Rick, would have preferred, I guarantee you, this decision not come at this point in time.
Yeah, no, of course, not a couple months before the election, especially when all indications were the Republicans are going to basically clean house.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this is an opportunity for Democrats to maybe even hold on to the House. Do you see that scenario playing out possibly, that maybe this anger turns into the Democrats hold on?
This can be a game changer. Look, prior to this decision, I think it was apocalyptic. I really do. My friends would get mad at me. What do you mean? How could people support? I said, no, it doesn't matter. Republicans don't have to have a plan. Things are not, the stars are not aligning on the Democratic side. And then all of a sudden, this happens. And I think probably this is a political opportunity. This gives an opportunity, I should say, for the Democratic side to energize the base and try to turn the base out, which is what has to happen. You have to go out and vote. And this may make a difference because these races are going to be tight for a wide variety of reasons. And you always have the Trump surprise yet. Before the election, you never know. I'm not saying that's favorable to the Republicans, the Trump surprise.
Going to be interesting to see how this plays out, and we will see where it goes. But, Bob, as always, I appreciate the input, the thoughts. Great stuff as always.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Bob Ney. This could be a game changer. It'll be interesting to see what happens out of it. I'm going to take a quick break. Back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss a minute. Always there, always available. Make sure you subscribe, share, like, comment, all of that stuff. You can get that at thericksmithshow.com. Right back after this. Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. So here's a shocker. Evidently, Trump, according to Forbes magazine, says Trump never stopped raising money from his supporters after the 2020 presidential race. All he did was kind of move it over. Moved it over into his business accounts, charging, his business kept charging all of his political outfits for goods and services and, all that stuff. In fact, they're saying about $1.3 million of money went into his business revenue since he lost the election in 2020. So that's a cool little bit of change. Now, supposedly he's a billionaire, so $1.3 billion is not a big deal. But it's a nice little chunk of change, little bit of side money, little pocket money. Little my crowd's bigger than your crowd money there. A little bit of something, right? Also, the Truth Social network is under scrutiny by a grand jury. Oh, shocking. A Trump business under scrutiny for some kind of malfeasance. Wow, I'm really kind of shocked. Next, you'll tell me it's going to go bankrupt. I would really just be shocked. Completely shocked. Wouldn't you be? Absolutely. And this thing with Ron Johnson. What is going on with Ron Johnson? And I remember, the allegations were first that somehow something got into his hands with the fake elector ballots. Somehow the alternative electors, their statements got into his hands. He was supposedly going to give them off to Pence. Said he had no idea, didn't do anything, didn't know anything, knew nothing. He said it was a couple minutes, barely remembers it. And then, well, maybe this. And now evidently he's pulled in Pennsylvania Representative Mike Kelly in his office, to which, Mike Kelly is saying, Johnson's, his allegations are patently false. So it's like they're lying, like kids, like when my kids were little and the lamp got broken. They're all lying on each other and all saying, no, we didn't do it. No, I didn't do it. This is one of those moments. And I always go back to anything in politics is be honest. Take your lumps. Be honest. Tell the truth. Because it's always the cover up. It's always the next step. It's always the lie that goes on top of the lie that gets you in trouble, which is why I do not lie. I'm not smart enough to lie. In fact, very few of us are smart enough to be good liars. It's one of the things that my wife and I agree on. We don't lie. Don't lie ever. Because, you got to remember that lie. And then you got to lie to keep up the lie, and it's just bad. So tell the truth. Take your beating. And I learned that as a kid. I used to tell my grandmother the absolute truth. She never believed me. Never. Oh, you're just telling me fib. I would tell her exactly what I was doing. She'd never believe me. And I learned, tell the truth. Nobody's ever going to believe the truth. And this is one of those things where Ron Johnson should have came out. Yeah, Mike Johnson gave me the ballots, the fake electors. And I gave him off to Pence because ultimately he was supposed to do something with it. Did I know it was illegal? No, I was just an errand boy. Take your beatings for being a rich errand boy. But to lie on top of a lie on top of a lie. Good folks of Wisconsin, our listeners in Madison, our listeners in Milwaukee, our listeners in Waukesha, please send Ron Johnson somewhere else. Your state needs jobs. Your state needs real leadership. I'm a big fan of Tom Nelson. I like him. But if not him, somebody else but Ron Johnson. Somebody. Just my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Always there, always available. Wherever you get your favorites, go there and get it. If it's not there, let us know. We'll make sure it gets there. Big week, big hearing tomorrow. Cannot wait. Make sure you're here. I can't wait. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.